In the vast, silent emptiness of the Sahara, where endless sand hides danger beneath its calm surface, a French expedition moved steadily south with grand ambitions and hidden fears. Led by Paul Flatters, bold dream of carving a railway through one of the most unforgiving deserts on Earth. What began as a confident survey for progress slowly turned into a journey filled with tension, mistrust, and looming violence. The Flatters expedition was organized during a time when European colonial powers strongly believed that modern technology, especially railways, could transform and control vast territories. France wanted to connect its North African colony of Algeria with its interests farther south in Africa by building a railway across the Sahara Desert. This railway was expected to make trade faster, allow quick movement of soldiers, and help France dominate economic and political life in the region. The expedition's main task was to study whether such a railway was possible at all. Members of the expedition had to observe landforms, measure distances, map mountains and sand dunes, locate water sources, and record climate conditions. The Sahara, however, was extremely dangerous, with intense heat during the day, freezing temperatures at night, violent sandstorms, and long stretches without water. Planning a railway through such an environment was risky, and the expedition carried the heavy responsibility of proving whether France's ambitious dream could succeed. Paul Flatters was a French military officer chosen to lead the expedition because of his experience in North Africa and earlier desert missions. He was disciplined, confident, and trusted by the French government. However, Flatters was not just an explorer, he was a representative of French colonial authority. Meant that the expedition symbolized French expansion and control, even if its stated purpose was scientific. The expedition included soldiers, weapons, and official government backing, which made it appear threatening to local populations. While Flatters attempted to negotiate and gain cooperation from desert communities, his authority came from a colonial system that aimed to dominate rather than coexist. As a result, many local groups did not trust his intentions, viewing him as an agent of foreign control rather than a neutral explorer. In early 1881, the expedition began its journey from Algeria, which had been under French rule for decades and served as a base for colonial operations. From there, the group moved southward into the Central Sahara, an area that was largely unmapped by Europeans and extremely difficult to navigate. The further they traveled, the harsher the environment became. Camels and men suffered from dehydration, exhaustion, and disease. Supplies had to be carefully rationed, and any mistake in navigation could lead to disaster. Communication with French authorities was almost non-existent once they entered deep desert regions. This isolation meant the expedition was completely dependent on its own resources and the cooperation of local guides, making it increasingly vulnerable as it advanced. As the expedition crossed into territories traditionally controlled by Tuareg groups, resistance grew steadily stronger. The Tuareg were nomadic desert people who had lived in the Sahara for centuries and were highly skilled in desert survival and warfare. They controlled important trade routes and oases, which were essential for life in the desert. French plans for a railway threatened their independence, economic power, and control over the land. Previous encounters with colonial forces had often resulted in violence and broken agreements, creating deep mistrust. Many Tuareg leaders believed that allowing the expedition to proceed would open the door to military occupation and loss of freedom. As a result, the expedition faced growing hostility, including false guidance, surveillance, refusal of assistance, and preparation for armed resistance. In February 1881, the expedition met its tragic end near Bir el Gharama. The main column was tired, low on supplies, and far from any support. Tuareg fighters launched a sudden and well-coordinated ambush, using their deep knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. The attack was swift and devastating. Many members of the expedition were killed almost immediately, including Paul Flatters himself. Camels were captured or killed. The ambush destroyed the expedition's ability to continue and showed how exposed and unprepared the group was in hostile territory. After the ambush, the Flatters expedition was completely shattered. Only a small number of survivors managed to escape, often traveling in scattered groups through the desert. Their retreat northward toward Algeria was extremely dangerous, with constant fear of further attacks, severe hunger, and lack of water. Some survivors barely lived to tell their story. The destruction of the expedition shocked the French government and public, forcing officials to reconsider the risks of deep desert expansion. Plans for a trans-Saharan railway were abandoned for many years. The failure of the expedition became a powerful example of the dangers of colonial ambition and the strength of indigenous resistance in the Sahara.